Why are you questioning what was said to me? Why are you up in my business, Satan? Instead of her flipping the script and challenging the thoughts, right? Because the enemy will whisper to you. Ladies, I am so excited to say Happy New Year, and I pray that you are ready for everything that belongs to you this year. We are coming out the gate swinging, and we're not missing, okay? If you are also subscribed to the audio podcast, which can be found on anywhere, maybe Spotify, even the Spice Wife mobile app, and even iTunes or Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, you know that I have 2 different forms of content on the audio podcast and on YouTube. So on the audio podcast, we got pumped. Every Tuesday I release an episode, and we got pumped about what we are not dealing with this year. It's a year of zero tolerance. It's a year of us living and understanding it, freedom and thriving in that. And so I advise you to head over there and get that encouragement and that spark that you need, so that this year is no game playing. Like, you are in it to succeed, you're in it to prosper. Like, you are in whatever situation you are in to make the best out of it, not to let it become who you are, but to tell your day what to do, to tell your mind how to think, to tell that situation what it's going to work out for you, or what it's going to do for you, and how it's going to work out for you, right? So today, what I'm going to talk about is handling the fact that you want to be a new you, but your husband might still be the same him. This topic is coming from a question that I received, and I'm going to read it. It says, "Hi, Ashlyn. I listen to your podcast on Spotify, and I recently started following you also on YouTube. I love both. Thank you for all that you do. I wanted to ask you, how do I handle my husband's mindset or lack thereof? I am so excited to grow and become a better wife and just a better woman all around, especially for the new year. But my husband is such a downer. He does nothing to grow. He has the same mentality year after year. He always finds something wrong with me, but I don't even trust he hears from God to even consider what he says. He just fusses and doesn't change, and it's a drag to watch him waste so much time every day. I see him doing nothing. I love him, and we have a general great relationship, but this is draining. I want us to grow together. Thank you for your counsel on this." All right, so I can understand where you're coming from, because you love your husband. As you said, you have a great relationship with him, and you truly want to grow together. And who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to grow and advance with their husband? You guys are one. And I can feel you. I can feel you how that's draining, that you feel you're constantly wanting to learn, you're constantly wanting to grow, you're constantly want to do better. You are happy about the new year, and you want to change your mindset, you want to grow, you want to evolve. But then you have your husband who is the same mentality, and you kind of feel like he is a weight that you're carrying, and you want to be led by him. You don't want to drag him along. I understand that, and rightfully so. But one thing that I always want to encourage every wife that I talk to is realizing you cannot control your husband. You can only control you. And the best thing that you can do is to work on you and have grace for him, and let God be God when it comes to your husband needing to be changed, needing to hear what motivates him, needing to hear what corrects him. Trust that God is big enough to do that. Trust that God is big enough, and he's mighty enough, and he's strong enough, and he's God enough to send something to spark your husband, to send somebody to speak into your husband who he will listen to, who he can trust, to where you don't seem like you're nagging, and you don't seem like you're fussing. And also, you don't want to cause a wedge between you and your husband because you're constantly pointing the finger and telling him he needs to do better. You just don't want to do that. It just does it slows things down more than it speeds things up. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't times where you're actually going to have to maybe speak up and say some things to your husband and try to encourage him and speak into him. Yes, you're going to have those times. Those moments are going to happen. But you have to choose those moments wisely, and you have to choose your tone wisely, and you have to approach that with wisdom. And so trust God that he's going to do he's going to do for your husband what he wants done in your husband's life. And your prayers are powerful. Your prayers absolutely matter. Speak out loud over your marriage. Speak out loud in prayer over your husband, and speak life into him when speaking to him. Now, let's talk about Eve, because I believe in answering your question, speaking about Eve is actually going to kind of hit this on the head for you and answer your question to the T. I'm praying so. So listen to this. I'm reading the ESV translation, and it is Genesis 3, and we're going to go from verse 1 to verse 6. It says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?' And the woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate." Let's talk about this whole thing. Because one thing that I do want you to know is the devil ain't coming up with no new tricks. He's been doing the same thing from the beginning as he's doing right now. I think a lot of us give him way too much credit. A lot of us give him way too much power, and we forget that we actually have power over him through Christ. And so a lot of times we are defeated because we are not realizing the truth about the opponent. He is crafty, but even him being crafty, his tactics are already revealed to us. And here is the main one. He talks to you and gets you to question who you are, what you know, and who God is. This is what he does very well. And this is what he did to Eve. But listen to this. Listen to this. He says to her, "Did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" When you get to Genesis 2:17, this is God talking to Adam. Eve wasn't there. She had not been created yet. This is the first command that he has given Adam. So if God gave the command to Adam, and Adam told Eve, and Satan is watching this whole thing, when Satan is coming to Eve, he's asking her, did God really say you shall not eat of the tree in the garden? So ultimately, what he is doing is he is attacking her view of her husband, because who told her that God said don't eat of that tree? She wasn't there. It was only Adam. So when her husband tells her what God says, here comes Satan to question, did God really say that? So then now Eve is sitting there and she's like, well, wait a minute. Imagine what begins to go through her mind. Like, imagine how all of these thoughts start to creep in just from one question whispered by the enemy. And I can just imagine Eve kind of being like, well, did God actually say that? I mean, I didn't hear it. God spoke to Adam and Adam spoke to me, but did he really hear God right? Maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. I didn't see him talking to God. I didn't see him praying. I didn't see him having that intimacy and that intimate moment with the Lord. Maybe God didn't say that. I didn't hear it. So notice that the very first thing that Satan came to do, the very first recorded attack in the Bible from Satan is on marriage. Isn't that interesting? That when Satan wanted to bring sin into the world, when Satan wanted to assist in the fall of humanity, his first thing was, let me go and attack marriage. And let me do it by talking to the wife. So there must be something major about marriage. There must be something incredible about marriage. That's one of the first relationships that God creates on earth, is a husband and a wife. Marriage is vital. And so Satan comes to attack the very thing that God placed on this earth to be a blessing, to prosper the earth. Marriage, that unity. So he's coming to Eve and he's like, let me ask you some questions because these things don't make sense. And Eve feeds into it. And let's continue reading on. So then the serpent says, and so when we go to verse 4, but the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to her eyes. We have to stop here because the enemy spoke to her what he wanted to contaminate. He wanted to contaminate her eyes. He wanted her to be more in tune with what she sees than what she knows. That's why the scripture tells us that you got to walk by faith and not by sight. You can't determine how you going to feel based on what you see. Notice that the enemy right away was like, God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open. So he's given her, he's planted that seed like, oh, my eyes, right? And so then what does she say? So then the woman saw, he spoke that to her. The woman saw that the tree was good and that it was a delight to the eyes. Satan wants to change and control your sight because he knows that women are emotional. He knows that we are very sensitive, and that is why he's coming to attack the woman first. Because naturally, because we are a more sensitive being, because we were created to be a more just the feminine role, right? He knows that we can be so sensitive to the Holy Spirit. He knows that we are going to really be moved by our emotions, be moved by our feelings, and we're just more sensitive. And so he came to attack that. He wants to come after our sight. And so after speaking with the devil, that's exactly what happened. Her sight changed. And now what she's seeing, she's now looking and she's like, oh, I actually have delight in that. I actually like that. Wait, maybe it's not that bad after all. I like this tree. I'm going after this tree. But she's going against God. She's going against the command that God gave her husband. Let's make this so practical. Like, what if your husband is like, I don't know, let's just make up something. What if your husband is like, I don't want you getting that new car yet. And Satan's like, but you work hard. Why can't you go get a new car? Why can't you live your life? Why is your husband always stunting your growth? Why is he always worried about money? Why is he always worried about this? And then what happens? You start to see the car that you want over and over and over again. And then you start to question, like, my husband doesn't even like to live. My husband's the same person that he's always been. And he just wants to complain about money. We have enough money. We work. So your sight is starting to be affected, which is now starting to affect your perspective. And that's exactly what happened here. Her sight was now changed, which changed her perspective, because instead of her stopping to question, why are you questioning what was said to me? Why are you up in my business, Satan? Instead of her flipping the script and challenging the thoughts, right? Because the enemy will whisper to you. So instead of challenging the negative thinking, instead of challenging what is causing division, right? Instead of challenging how you're seeing your husband, you're going along with what you hear, and your perspective is being changed. And so what's happening is now her perspective is determining her life, is determining her decisions. And that could be the same thing with us, because mindset is everything. It truly is. Mindset is everything. And so now her perspective is starting to change. And now her mental view is now becoming her state of how she's comprehending facts. Your mindset changes how you calculate things. If I am taught originally that 1 + 1 is 2, but then somebody else comes talking about, well, actually, there's components that you can't see. And so really 1 + 1 is actually 4, because there's doubles here. And if there's doubles, there's always something else that needs to be added in. And so now your thought process on what you know to be true is now starting to get cluttered. And now you're starting to question what you know, instead of questioning who's coming to change what you know to be true. That's Satan. He's always trying to cause division, and he's trying to be crafty as he can. But this also makes me think of Matthew 6:22 through 23, where Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? The eye is the lamp of the body. What? So Satan is sitting here whispering, telling you, look at how your husband ain't reading his Bible. Look at how he's scrolling on social media all day. Look at how all he does is watch sports. Look at how he gets annoyed when it's time to watch a sermon. Look at how this, look at how that. And so Satan is coming after your sight to get you to heighten, to get your eyes to heighten things that are negative. Isn't Satan the accuser? So he's going to put accusations in your mind based on what it is that you're seeing. So now you're thinking that is truth, and now your mindset is shifting, your perspective is shifting, and now there's a wedge between you and your husband. Now it's hard to see any good in him. Now you don't want to respect him. Now you don't want to submit to him. Now you're not trusting what he said. Now you're questioning if he even hears from God, as if God can't use a donkey, as if God can't speak through a tree, as if God can't talk through a rock. Like literally the word says God will use anything that he chooses. And so you think that, oh, because I don't see XYZ in my husband, God can't talk to him. God's not using him. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm not going to honor him. I'm not going to respect him. And it's just a domino effect. So in reading this question from this wife, where she's like, I don't even believe what my husband is saying, because he doesn't even talk to God. He doesn't even grow in God. So what she's doing is she's watching her husband and she's judging her husband. We have to be careful of that. We have to put ourselves in this wife's shoes, and we have to think of all of the times that we questioned our husband because we're watching his lack of what we believe he should be doing. I'm not saying that it's right that he doesn't pray. I'm not saying that it's right that he doesn't read his Bible if that's what he doesn't do. I don't know. But I am saying be careful, because you don't know what he does in his private time. Maybe he feels a little bit intimidated, or maybe he feels a little bit out of place because you are always seeking God, and maybe you are really strong in your walk with God, and maybe he feels like, anything I try to tell her, she ain't gonna listen to me anyway because she knows God better than me. She gonna run the scripture down to me. She's not gonna listen to what I have to say. Sometimes we have to step back and evaluate, how have we demonstrated humility? How have we demonstrated meekness in our growth? Because one thing's for sure, you don't ever stop growing for anybody. You need to always grow. You need to always evolve. I'm somebody that's going to always sign up for a workshop. I'm going to always sign up for a class. I'm going to always tune in to a good podcast or a good sermon. I'm going to always tune into something that edifies me and grows me, because I want to also, just like you, be better and better and grow more and more. And I don't have time for anybody trying to stump my growth. But I do have patience and I do have grace, and I want to be humble with my growth because I don't want my growth to then stunt somebody else. I don't want to offend somebody. I'm not going to stop growing, but I also don't want to offend somebody else who may not be growing how I want to grow, or may not be on the level that I've gone to by God's grace. I want to be careful with that. So when it comes to your husband, you want to make sure that in your walk with God and in your growth with God, you're being humble, you're being sensitive to your husband, and you're still honoring him and respecting him because he has been placed as the head of the marriage. That's God's design. It ain't mine. It's God's design. And I've learned that I'm not going to argue with how God set things up. I might have feelings, I might have opinions, I might have thoughts, but at the end of the day, God is God and I'm not. And so we have to be very careful thinking that we know how to do things better than God does. God said that the man is head. So God knows what he's doing. God was here before I was. God gave me breath. So I am going to crucify my flesh, and I'm going to ask God for wisdom in where the enemy is causing me to question my husband because I'm not seeing something that I believe I need to be seeing. Now, your belief isn't wrong. You should see your husband praying. You should see your husband growing in God. But you have to, and you will. Let me also encourage you with that. You will. Your behavior can absolutely win your husband over. That's 1 Peter 3. So I know that you will see change, but you have to make sure you are careful with your growth, that you are working on you in a way that is meek, that is gentle. You want to make sure that you still are honoring your husband and you're respecting him as a grown man. If you can't find nothing else to respect the fact that he's a grown man. You wouldn't have married a child. He's a grown man. He's an adult. You have to treat him as such. Don't mother him. Don't hover over him. Don't, monitor him. Let him be him. Let him choose how he wants to be. But you stay strong in who you are becoming, and you allow your presence to begin to shift and begin to change the atmosphere in your home. I promise you that your husband is going to watch more of what you do than what you say. So when you feel like he's nagging, when you feel like he might be trying to point out things that are wrong with you, learn to kind of just listen. You don't have to be offended. Overcome being offended. Listen to him. He might, just because somebody says you're something, that doesn't mean that that's what you are. And know that the enemy can get into anyone. The enemy would love to get into your husband's thoughts about you. So what you have to do is stay strong in who God has created you to be. But be mindful of what the enemy has been doing from the beginning, getting you to question your husband's authority, getting you to question who God has called your husband to be, getting you to question the position that God has placed your husband in. Satan was like, did God really actually say? Well, where did I hear it from? Eve was like, I heard that from my husband. Maybe he don't know what he's talking about. So we have to be careful what we're believing in our mind based on what it is that we see. I want to encourage you to continue to grow strong, but demonstrate the benefits of Jesus so that your husband can see, wow, she didn't nag at me about that. wow, she's not judging me anymore because of what I'm not doing. And wow, she's not questioning my manhood. Wow, she actually spoke to me soft. She actually listened to me instead of barking at me. Like, wow, those things begin to trigger your husband's mind to do better, to be better, because he sees how Jesus in you is changing you, and it's changing the atmosphere, and the way you're responding to him is so loving. And the Bible even tells us that it's a soft answer that turns away wrath. So the way you're responding is actually convicting your husband's heart, and it's making him feel like, oh dang, I need to do more. I need to be better for her, because dang, look at how she's doing. But you got to have patience on your end. You have to stick strong with trusting God and depending on God to do all that you can't do, but stay focused on your growth. Grow in meekness. When you're growing, be gentle with your growth. Don't wave it over anybody, especially over your husband. And don't allow Satan to be whispering to you and causing your sight to change and causing you to question who your husband is and who your husband can be. All right. So I hope that this helps. I'm going to stop it here. There's so much more that we can say, but make sure that you subscribe to get so much more. And I will see you ladies in the next video.